Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Andy!
Pete?
Do you remember what you were doing 5 years ago tonight?
Oh, let's think. 5 years ago tonight. Would that be 11/11/11?
It was 11/11/11. Do you remember what you were doing and who you were doing it with?
Pete, that's awfully personal. What was I doing, Pete? Do you know?
You were talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark, Andy, and you were doing it with me 5 years ago today. Sort of.
Dun, 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 dun. Yes, I was, Pete. I do remember.
Do you have anything to say about 5 years, about what you have, about the immensity of the hours, the sheer total hours that you have wasted over the last 5 years with me?
I couldn't have wasted it with a better person.
There you go, Andy.
Yeah. No, it's great. 5 years. It's hard to believe that it's hit, that it's been that long. And I think it's fantastic. Here's to another 5 and more.
That's right. You know, we only have 351 episodes to hit that, the vaunted 700.
Oh, we can do it. And then beyond that,
fish in a barrel.
1150.
So here you go, Andy. I'm raising my water bottle in a toast to you. 5 years.
Yay.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey!
And we spoil movies tonight on the show. It's number 2 in our Bette Davis extravaganza with Irving Rapper's 1942 film, Now Voyager. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or join us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you're asking yourself, surely The Next Reel wouldn't be able to find another movie in which Bette Davis kills someone due to resentful inaction, could they? Gear up for The Next Reel's Instagram Bette Davis Murderthon in the hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge.
And with that, let's tune in with Games Master Steven Smart, stuck on the side of a road on Sugarloaf Mountain, to find out who won this week.
Hey guys, this week's movie was The Negotiator from 1998, directed by F. Gary Gray and starring Samuel L. Jackson, Kevin Spacey and David Morse. Congrats to @NowTO who guessed it on Image 1. You're entered once again into the 2016 Pony Prize hat. As always, a new challenge starts on Monday. So thanks guys, and see you later.
We've got a blot spot. Follow-up friend of the show, Ben Lott, wrote us to talk about The Little Foxes.
My initial reaction to The Little Foxes was that it felt very much like a stage production. While the camera placement was brilliant, the set design and blocking of the actors was a little flat. I have to agree with Pete that it took some time to catch up on who was who and what was happening. But once I was on board, I thought the acting performances were very good, and they helped to make this a film I kinda liked. Your rank 225, my rank 149.
Kinda liked it.
Yeah, hey, it's higher than us.
Hey, let me tell you, I take that as I'm curious about that, and mostly I take it as a win that he was also confused. See, Andy, I told you so. It's hard to figure it out. Anyway,
I acknowledge that, and it's okay. It's okay.
Nobody said you weren't smarter than everybody else in the room. Nobody said that. Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers.
I got the red band, so I get to go first. New rule.
Okay,
I just made it.
Take it. Red band rule. Red band rule.
So my trailer, it's a story about a man who is lost and lonely in life and unsure what to do with himself. And then he discovers that he actually had a daughter with his ex-wife, and she had put her up for adoption 17 years ago. And he goes on a quest to with his ex-wife to find their daughter, who is now 17, and kind of rekindle a family relationship. Now, this is actually
Gosh, you are rather like really tricking people.
I'm really tricking people because this is Woody Harrelson and Laura Dern, and it is a really kind of crass comedy that looks just hilarious. It's based on a graphic novel by Daniel. Is it Clowes or Clowes? I'm not actually sure how you say his name.
I don't know.
But he is.
I'm not gonna wade into those waters. Are you kidding?
You're gonna let me do this one on my own, huh? But he's a guy who's he's written some screenplays. He was involved in Ghost World. That's another thing that he had created, the graphic novel, and then he wrote the script for Terry Zwigoff. And I believe Art School Confidential was something of his. And so he's somebody who has an interesting take on people and society, and his graphic novels certainly show that. This story, Wilson, which I had never heard of. I'd never heard of these graphic novels before or this character. But man, is it just a fascinating character. And Woody Harrelson really plays it well because he is a very crazy man, and his whole quest to kind of rekindle this relationship with his daughter he never knew he had just looks for a really wacky, crazy time. Yet also, I feel like there's going to be a tiny bit of heart in here. So that was my read on the film, but it got me pretty excited. What'd you think of it?
I don't know. I found myself chuckling about it, but it took me so long to figure out what I was chuckling at. Like, was it just that it's Woody Harrelson doing something that he happens to be good at, like being this foul-mouthed, goofy guy? I like these three people on screen together. I thought they were funny. I'm not sure if there's quite enough substance from the trailer to get me to really be able to feel like I can laugh at the comedy.
I feel like what Close is how I'm going to say his name. Close does with his characters in the stories that he writes. He creates these very real, authentic characters that have so many quirks that it's such a strange world, but you can so easily kind of understand their world. And that's kind of my sense here, is that this is a guy who is in this place where he's very kind of has this strange outlook on life, et cetera, et cetera. But through that and through this kind of quest to get more out of life by, connecting with this daughter he never knew he had, I feel like there's going to be something really interesting there. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a hope, but I'm excited to see it. It looks really kind of just cuckoo, and it's definitely on my list of things to see next year. And it is actually going to be opening March 24th next year.
March
and that is
24th. All right.
That's it that is listed for release dates. USA, March 24th, 2017. That's the only place you can see this, apparently.
It's November, Andy. That doesn't bode well.
We shall see.
I'm all about hope, which is why I picked my trailer for the evening. This is if there isn't a movie more aptly described as hopeful, it's this one about a foul-mouthed child prodigy, math prodigy, under the tutelage of Chris Evans. It is called Gifted, and I'm not lying. This caused me to sprout a man tear right out of my big stupid face.
Is that what you do with tears? You sprout them?
You do right out of your face. They sprout out of your face. That's what happens. This is the story of Frank. Chris Evans plays Frank. He's a single man raising his niece, Mary, and it gets into a big old custody battle with his mother. He wants to raise her in a very normal school, this little girl, and his mother, her grandmother, says, no, you're denying her the potential that she has to be brilliant because she's all kinds of brilliant. She's full-on Good Will Hunting brilliant. Anyway, here's the thing. This is what I like about this. First of all, Chris Evans in a non-Cap movie, I get excited about that. I like the guy. I think getting to know him as Captain America has made me like him even more when he is not Captain America, so I'm excited to see him in this. But it also comes from director Mark Webb, and it almost feels like he is delivering everything I liked about 500 Days of Summer in this movie again through this little girl, this little foul-mouthed prodigy girl, and I'm excited about him coming back around from Spider-Man and giving me a little bit of Gifted. So I think it looks really interesting. How did it hit you?
It looks like a really interesting story, and I completely agree with everything you said about Chris Evans. What a fascinating actor to watch, especially now when he does things that are not Captain America. It just makes me so excited to see stuff that he's putting out there, and he's really just doing unique projects. And not afraid to show characters that have a lot of cracks, and I like that. Plus this script, Tom Flynn wrote this script. This was on the Blacklist in 2014. And so, those scripts, they get talked about quite a bit, and they can get made into some pretty interesting things. So with all of that, I feel that this is definitely something worth checking out.
I do too, and we can do it. Mine is only moderately better than yours. USA, April 12th. Germany, May 4th. UK, June 16th. That's all I got. So, looks like kind of a small release, but we'll see. We will hold a candle. Andy, how does it feel to be the Lord?
I didn't want to be born. You didn't want me to be born either. It was a calamity on both sides. What is the feminine for your word? That's what I am. I knew you were married, and I walked right in with my eyes wide open. I'm immune to happiness.
You weren't immune that night on the mountain.
Do you call that happiness?
Why, darling, you were crying.
These are only tears of gratitude.
Don't talk like that.
You see, no one ever called me darling before. The intimate journal of Miss Charlotte Dale. Whole secret life hidden up here behind a locked door.
It's worse than Lisa led me to suppose. Much worse. I can only hope that a shameful episode of your life is completely past. Come out at once. Go to your cabin.
I don't care. I'm glad.
I can't work in the dark when there's a child in the picture.
I'll tell you everything.
Now Voyager, Andy, 1942, directed by Irving Rapper, written by Casey Robinson, who did the adaptation off of Olive HIggins Prouty's novel of the same name. Yeah. Stars Bette Davis, Paul Henreid, Claude Rains, Gladys Cooper, Benita Granville, John Loder, and many other wonderful people in this film. This was my first time seeing it. I know you are a Bette Davis booster, part of the Bette Davis Booster Club. And this is our second movie in your challenge to get me acquainted and convert me into a Bette Davis lover. How did this film hit you on this view?
I like how this series turned into this. It's become a challenge.
It has. Every time now, every movie I watch, I'm very skeptical. What is the case Andy's going to make?
Now, I have a question for you before we talk about Now Voyager.
Sure.
A Bette Davis question. So, you talked about Bette Davis a bit last week as far as your, what you thought about Bette Davis. You had, you didn't quite get it, what people saw in her or the Bette Davis eyes sort of thing, all of that stuff. So what is your experience with Bette Davis before this series started?
Pretty limited. And so that's why, it was more the icon stuff than anything else. I'm pretty sure... I've seen All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and mostly because they were sort of later in the career. Those were the movies my folks were interested in. Those were the classics that my dad was watching. So those are the films that I was introduced to. So I hadn't watched these that we're doing. I'd never seen those. And when I saw those earlier films, I was at a point where I was not thinking about the actors as icons, right? I wasn't thinking about their sort of star power as I was watching. I was just thinking about them as the movie. They were just people in the movie. So it wasn't until later, and probably, when it became a pop culture thing, Bette Davis eyes and that whatnot, that I became curious about how she became the actress that she did, or how she became sort of posthumously famous culturally.
Yeah, you mean more so than she already was. I mean,
that's what I mean. Culturally, yeah, it's like she became something, like she became famous to people who did not know her as the actress Bette Davis.
Interesting. Well,
did you just put your glasses up on your nose as you said that? Did you tap your pipe?
Let me study you a little bit more. This is worth some deeper analysis.
It certainly is.
Come to my cottage in the country where you can relax.
It's a sanatorium.
That's right. I actually really, really love this film, and so
you do.
I do.
You do.
I do. And I'm really curious to see where this conversation is going to go, because I think this is such an interesting character film that I think could fall into some seriously schmaltzy melodrama. But somehow, because the characters I find really interesting and I really connect with, I think it ends up it dances along that line, but I don't think it ever falls into it. I think that it maintains itself well and creates a really interesting and complex story about a woman who's, stuck in this situation, this kind of controlling situation by her mother. It's really about people in these relationships where they're kind of controlled by other people and how they find ways to get through that. And I really connect with this film. I really enjoy it. And now I'm curious to know what you think of
Well,
it.
no, this was fine. It was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't really connect with it. And I thought I had some challenges just like slogging through the plot of the overall narrative of her transformation and the weird celebration of infidelity that seemed so out of context in this film, given the other films that we've talked about. The very strange relationships that they end up sort of celebrating between her and the doctor. Some of the language was clever in the film. She was fine, though the weird sort of back and forth early in the film, the back and forth kind of they did these cuts that resembled flashbacks. that were sort of ineffective on me. It took me a while to figure out kind of why is she going back and forth in the wavy screen. It seemed like they could have been a little bit more linear in just presentation of her voyage, and so that confused me. And ultimately, I found her transformation was just sort of tough to swallow because of where she came from. So I didn't really connect with her relationship with her mother, and so when her mother died, it seemed like kind of an empty transition. Which I know was supposed to have a great. So it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts on this movie. Like there's not, overall, I like the people, but I feel like I could wander on with the little things that just made me look kind of askance at it. So I'm sorry.
No,
I feel like fine. I owe you an apology. I feel terrible.
Well, good, as you should. No. But it's interesting because I think that a lot of that stuff might be there, but somehow I don't know if it's because I've seen this just so many times and I just kind of look past a lot of that stuff now, or maybe I just don't see the problem in some of the things that you see, or I connect with things that you're not connecting with, that it just ends up working for me. I think the relationship with the mother and kind of the control issues that dear old mom plays, obviously is just a huge key part of the film. And it really, for me, cements this whole transformation. And I really buy into her transformation and her ability to kind of finally break through that because of the help with the doctor and this trip and through Jerry and the way that he treats her and all of this stuff, and see how she actually finally is able to kind of transform into something. And I find her voyage as she does so really strong and powerful, and really it really connects for me, and it really works for me. And I think when she comes home, there are some really interesting scenes with her mother where it's as if she's going to lose all of that again. And I enjoy seeing that, and how she finally is able to kind of pull herself through that and maintain a relationship with her mother while still being kind of a strong person. And I think that is a really interesting element of the story that I kind of wasn't expecting. And the fact that she is able to maintain that relationship and her kind of her acceptance for who she is, and kind of force that upon her mother, I think is so fascinating to watch. And I love seeing her transformation over the course of this film, from the really, as she is described in the picture, the fat old lady with the heavy brows and the big hair, or whatever, how she starts the film. And, then through the magic of going to the doctor, she, takes off her glasses and plucks her eyebrows, and she's Bette Davis, the beauty queen. And I think it's really kind of a funny depiction. And I guess that's an element of Hollywood in the 40s, yet definitely something that we still see today played, where you take off your glasses and, wow, I didn't know you were always so beautiful.
And I have to say, I am as superficial as the next guy in that regard. I really am. And I feel like you and I we came of age in the movies with those, when those movies were significant, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Those were the movies we grew up on, were the transformation movies. And it was, and so I get it. And I have kind of a soft spot in my heart for those movies. And I'm not telling you that this movie didn't chip away at the icy veneer that I have for the movie, because that part in particular, her as when she comes back and she puts on the black dress and she goes in and she has that first conversation with Dora, the nurse. And I actually, that was one of the elements that I really liked, was her relationship with Dora, and Dora sort of edging her back into reality of this relationship with her mother. I thought that was a really nice touch, and so there are some other elements about the maternal relationship that I had trouble with, but ultimately, like the black dress reveal, the fact that her mother throws herself down the stairs and thus opens the door for her daughter to take over, throwing a party for the family. I thought that was brilliant. Like, that was just lovely and energizing, and kind of thrilling to watch her become sort of the butterfly in the family, and how much her mother resented it. So there are elements in that transformation that I really resonate with. That is true.
Well, and the script goes in such interesting directions. Like I never really know where it's going to go, and I'm guessing that you didn't either. It sounded like you might have had some issues with it because of that. But I find it so fascinating that you're watching this story, and it's like I can't figure it out. There are things happening and directions that we're going that are new and surprising to me. And for me, I counted that as a big win because I couldn't pinpoint it. And the fact that it ends where it does with her taking care of Jerry's daughter and not in a relationship with Jerry is just not what I was expecting for kind of a romantic drama from the 40s. You know, I was fully expecting her and Jerry to somehow end up together. And so I don't know. I feel like this film ended up subverting so many things and so many elements of kind of expected romance storytelling from the time in order to tell this story about this woman who needs to find who she is, and the strength that she has at the end when she, as much as she wants Jerry, when she is able to tell Jerry, no, we can't do this. Otherwise, you know, the doctor is going to take Tina away from me, which means that you're gone out of my life. And this is the only way that we can still have a little bit of something. And I think there's an amazing strength that she has kind of grown and has found herself. And so I don't know. I guess I find it such an interesting exploration of her as a person and as a human, and how she kind of grows into this place that is not just a woman who needs to have that man in her life all the time.
See, now I'll give you that it is an interesting story of her transformation, but man, the end, the resolution, when she actually says, we can't have this. I need to keep caring for your daughter. She needs me. Now's an important time. You need to go back to your wife and fix your family because your wife doesn't want your daughter. I found that so enormously frustrating. Like, it was such a cognitive dissonance for me. I couldn't hold all of those competing elements in my head because I was so frustrated by them. I did not buy her as her transformation into sort of the nurse for in this sanatorium for this one girl. I couldn't make heads or tails of it in my head. I didn't connect with it, and it caused the movie to end on quite a down note for me.
Which it is. I mean, it definitely is a down note. I mean, it's kind of
it's a narrative.
Tragedy,
yeah, it's definitely a romantic tragedy, but it had built up any of the earned goodwill of the narrative of the film. By the end, it was washed away because I didn't buy it. I was not in it. At the end, oh no, don't let's ask for the moon. You know, we have the stars. It was a very famous line, and I'd never seen it delivered on screen, and I wanted it to mean something to me. But at the end, I was so torn up by the fact that they had such a weird relationship that didn't seem appropriately sold to me. It never sucked me into the point where I could actually feel that emotional depth that I needed to feel at the end of this movie. It sprouted no man tears.
So, and that's really interesting. So it sounds like the ending you would have preferred, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is if he divorced his wife, and then he and Tina and Charlotte all kind of got together.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the ending I would have necessarily preferred. All I know is the ending I got is not an ending that rewarded me. Okay. Right? It was either sort of too sorrowful or not sorrowful enough. Like I could have understood if she had somehow died, I could have understood let's really, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's make the loss of their relationship, really something. But this is also on the heels of her telling, what's his name? Her young suitor that didn't know her in his youth, but
Elliot.
Came back and fell in love. Elliot. So this idiot Elliot falls in love with her, and they have the most banal breakup I have ever seen on screen. I was like kicking myself. That was so stupid. I'm not sure. Should I kiss you now? Oh, no, let's not kiss. Let's just say goodbye. I'm still going to see you. So it was just so stupid.
It was so funny.
It's just ridiculous.
It was so strange. No, I completely agree with that. I'm like, that is the most strangely formal, like, end of a relationship I've ever seen.
It's just awful.
Oh, it's so peculiar. And it's, I mean, in a way, I guess you could argue that it speaks to, what the relationship really was. Although I really kind of agree with you. I'm just like, I just don't get that. I really don't get that. It makes no sense.
So such unearned formality. That's what it was. Just not. It just didn't fit. What do we think of Casey Robinson? Casey Robinson did the script based on the book. What do we know of Casey Robinson? Now I know Casey Robinson did some. I mean, he was he was a contract writer. In the 30s and 40s at Warner's. He was on Casablanca for a while. He's got some big production credits under his belt. But what do we think of Casey Robinson as the writer of this thing?
That's an interesting question. I don't know really what to pin to Casey Robinson or to Prouty's original novel as far as kind of the way that it's written and the way that it unfolds. I guess I'm not exactly sure really what to make of it. All I know that Casey Robinson wrote a good number of films with Bette Davis, like I don't know, 5 or 6 different films that he worked on for her with her. And so I think that, although I should say that I don't think that she was on this film actually when he was writing it. So I can't say that he was writing it for her or with her in mind or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, my sense of the story is that it's an interesting story, and I think the structure is interesting. You already mentioned the flashback sequences. It's a strange. I mean, I guess in context of the film, it makes sense to have them as flashbacks, the way that the story is told. But what a strange device. And I could not figure out why they chose, why Irving Rapper chose to do them this way.
Andy, I'm so relieved to hear you say that.
Well, because it's like you dissolve into the pages of the book, flipping back. And it's like, why are they forcing this reference to the source material in the context of the flashback, like forcing a reminder that, hey, don't forget, this is based on a book, folks. It's so weird, and I really couldn't figure it out. And that is it's one of the most peculiar things I've seen as far as flashbacks go, and it certainly is not something that I would recommend people do because it's really really awkward. I don't know if that's something Casey Robinson came up with or Irving Rapper. I don't know whose decision it was to do the flashbacks that way, but just very strange, very, very strange.
The question I have for you as a fan of this movie is, do you think that flashbacks were if that mechanism, like the mechanic of the flashback, was the right choice for the film? Could you have just told the stinking story start to finish?
Well, so that means that we would have had, because the first flashback is when she has her little tryst on the boat.
Yes, yeah, which was weird because she's like a 13-year-old talking about her lovemaking style.
I don't think she's quite that young.
Well, they made her up young.
Yes, they definitely made her up young. But I don't think that, I mean, that would have essentially been the kickoff of the story. And I don't know, I feel like that, I guess you could argue easier, did we need it at all, versus should we have started it and just done it linearly?
That's actually my argument, is did we need that, right? Did we need her tryst on the boat?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the nice thing about having the tryst on the boat is we get a sense that she has had some explorations and she's tried things before. Just seeing Charlotte at the beginning of the film, you almost would never expect her to have done anything out of the ordinary with a boy. You know, it doesn't seem like she would have ever tried anything outside of what her mother told her to do. So I guess the benefit to having that flashback is you do get a sense that Charlotte has tried pushing the boundaries before, only to have her mother kind of snap her back into place.
But this is one of those interesting examples, and I totally get where you're going, and I appreciate that because it's very much a show don't tell experience, right? I mean, but I kind of feel like there are enough ancillary characters and enough of the sort of hen style characters and the other aunts and cousins that are constantly around that we could have achieved this in like one back and forth line. Right? We could have said, oh, did you know? Oh, yes, she used to have a fling of a boy on a boat. Oh, really? Yes, but then her mother, kicked her to the curb. And so, I mean, we could have had something, some exchange like that told the story and moved us right into where she is.
Yeah, and that you're probably right. You probably could get rid of it and you wouldn't really miss much, or just throw in a line of dialogue to cover it up. Likewise, you could also have done it just standard without having that wacky formula of the pages turning, and then it would have just been a very straightforward flashback, and it might have just been easier to take. Regardless, I think that there is an argument that we might not have needed them at all.
That is the argument I'd like to stick with, sir.
All right.
Have you read any of the book? Have you read any of the Prouty?
I have not. I know that she's written a few things that I think this and Stella Dallas were both made into films.
My understanding is that the book was all about Europe, and she was pretty uptight about that she really, really wanted them filmed in Europe, in Italy specifically, yes?
Exactly. Yeah, this is one of those funny things, this novelist sells her book to Hollywood, and then she has all these demands. She really wanted it filmed in Italy. The book, when Charlotte goes on the voyage and meets Jerry, it's on this ocean voyage to Europe, and it's all very romantic and European. But World War II was going on, and they couldn't do anything in Europe, and so they decided, hey, let's send them to Brazil instead, against Prouty's wishes. And then Prouty also wanted the film. She said, I want it to be shot in vibrant color, and then I want the flashbacks to all be in black and white with subtitles, which sounds really strange. And obviously they disregarded her completely. And that's why you don't let your novelists dictate how you're going to make your movie, because that would have been kind of a peculiar one. I mean, it's artsy, I guess.
Oh, jeez. What about the transition to Irving Rapper? He did a number of films with Bette Davis. This was the second of them. And he just kept coming back.
Yeah, it's funny. He ended up doing 5 films with her, and he did Shining Victory, The Corn is Green, Deception, and Another Man's Poison. I think this is the only one I've seen. I might have seen Deception, but I don't think so. And honestly, I don't think I've seen anything else by Irving Rapper anyway. I think this might be the only film of his that I've seen. But it's interesting because as much as he, worked with Bette, I mean, he did 5 films with her, he said that she was very difficult to work with. And he said she had the tendency to hold the whole set hostage, stopping production for a day because of her mood. We already kind of talked about that a little bit on Little Foxes, and how she and Wyler had a big fight that ended up with her leaving the set for like a week or two. Same thing here. I mean, I don't think it ever got quite so big, but she definitely had fights with him about decisions that were happening with her character and the way things were going. And it made it very hard for him. But he still ended up living to be the ripe old age of 101. So it's not like she took that many years off of his life.
They say that he was, they call him the last surviving, or was the last surviving director of the golden age of Hollywood at 101. That's a tribute, and it makes me feel bad that I haven't seen more of his stuff. Interestingly, he is the director that won Robert Rich his Oscar. An Oscar. Robert Rich was the pseudonym of Dalton Trumbo while he was blacklisted.
Yeah, that's for The Brave One.
Yeah.
I think he does a fine job here. My sense, based on Prouty's comments about the flashbacks in black and white and all that, I am wondering if the book jumps back and forth with a lot more flashbacks, because it's this kind of a strange comment to say, I want the flashbacks all in black and white and subtitles. It makes me feel like there must be more of them, and the story is really kind of structured to kind of jump back and forth. So, I think that it's fine the way that he ended up directing this film. I think it works, the structure that he has here. I don't think any more flashbacks certainly would have strengthened it.
No, that's the truth. Let's talk about first shot, last shot.
Oh, let's.
First shot, we're looking at we're close in on the veil block at the bottom of a statue in the pouring rain at night. We pull back slowly and tilt up to reveal the Vale Mansion, the Vales of Boston. I think there's a car pull up. Is that the deal? That's what gets us in the house eventually? I think a car pulls up and they walk in, something like that.
Yeah, right. Or car drives by or something. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
That's the first shot.
And then the last shot, of course, is the famous moment when Charlotte and Jerry are they have their cigarettes and they've just said their famous line, "Don't let's ask for the moon, we have the stars." As you've got a close-up of their two faces looking lovingly at each other, and you push between their two faces out the window, through the trees, and up into the sky, which is full of stars and no moon in sight.
Was there a moon? Was the moon a theme that I just missed in the movie?
No.
Like when they're in the boat, did they keep cutting to a moon?
Nope.
Felt like there should be more moon given the last shot.
Well, I think
felt like that should be like a metaphor. Like they should, as if they lost the moon and now they don't need the moon because they have each other and they have all their little stars. I don't know. How do these connect for you?
I think that the first shot is definitely setting up our world. It's giving us a sense of the place that we are going to be in for the context of this film. This is a stately, rich, well-to-do family in Boston, one of the name families, and of course we meet them. We meet them because of the name on this statue. And it's night and it's raining. So I don't know, it's a really interesting setup that really kind of, I don't know, it just creates a whole bunch of gloom and doom, and I think sets up nicely the story that we're about to jump into. And then the last shot, I think that, it's human faces. We start with the statue, we end up with a couple of human faces, and we go out to kind of this expansive universe. And I don't know. I'm a little torn on what to make of this first shot, last shot, as far as how the theme is tied together, but I do find them interesting. Did you come up with anything?
Not really. The obvious stuff is, the journey into light of these characters, right? It's the redemption story of their relationships. We start in the pouring rain, and the rain ends up being a cleansing element, and she is cleansed of the baggage of her her mother and her relationships, and suddenly she gets wide open, clear sky, right? And that feels a little bit too on the nose.
I love the last shot of the film. I think that's a really strong final shot when we go up and we just see the stars. I think that's very beautiful. But yeah, I don't know if there's a strong connection between first shot, last shot thematically, other than, like you already said, there's the rain connection, there's the cleansing on all of that. We start with kind of a blocky, hard, statue, and we end up with a very open, clear night. So, I don't know. I'm not sold on the real thematic connection between these two. We've
talked a little bit, obviously, about Bette Davis so far. What else do we need to know about her and her relationship to getting to this film?
I think that it's important to know that this is a film more than, I think, pretty much any other film that she had been in, where, at least up to this point, where she became really, really intensely involved. She campaigned to get this part. My understanding is that they were already looking at other actresses like Norma Shearer, Irene Dunne, Ginger Rogers, but Betty, she had read the script and was really, really in love with this character. She thought she could bring a lot to it. And so she actively campaigned to get it, and she ended up getting it. But she was studying the book and she was just doing everything she could. And as the film developed, she was really, really intensely involved in making sure it really kind of came across authentically, down to, she worked with Ori Kelly, who is designing the costumes, to help kind of really select the right look for her, both in the early stages and then the later stages, once she's kind of blossomed and everything. I think that says a lot, that this is a film that she really connected with. She obviously found a strong connection with the character of Charlotte Vale, and really kind of, felt that she needed to be the voice that brought this character to life. And I really think she does. I think both as as Aunt Charlotte at the beginning, when we have her, this really kind of dumpy Bette Davis with the really heavy eyebrows, the really terrible clothes and terrible hair, all the way through her transformation and how just ravishing she looks in her different outfits and everything. But beyond just the look, I think that there's so much going on with her in this performance that I find so fascinating to watch. I think she does bring so much to the table here. And makes this character her own and makes it a character that, like I said at the beginning, doesn't fall into just kind of melodramatic, over-the-top performance, but really makes it an authentic, living, breathing character.
I think finding the things that I really enjoyed about her performance when she first has that pivot with her mother, and they move into that phase of kind of détente when her mother realizes that in fact she's not going to be able to push her around so much anymore. It's a result of this strength that Davis has on her face, in her eyes, when she confronts her mother and tells her, "I'm going to sleep where I want to sleep. I'm going to sleep in the bedroom where I want to sleep, and I'll thank you to treat me like a guest." I found that to be a real pinnacle in her performance in this film, more so I think than the actual killing of her mother scene. And I have to compare that with the killing of her husband scene in the movie we watched last week in Little Foxes, because this one was so anemic. Like, it was so bad.
You mean on the mother's part, as far as
on
how
the
mother
mother's
dies?
part? Yeah. Oh goodness, the way that the drama of the little fox's death as he's struggling in the distance, and it was shot so magnificently, right? You really appreciate the thought that went into the construction of the little fox's death scene, and in this one, we do a medium shot of the mom. She grasps her heart and her head flops over, and that's pretty much the end. She's dead. Put a fork in her. I found that just sucked all the oxygen out of what could have been a really interesting scene.
Oh, see, I think that's so interesting because it's so small and so you almost don't even know if she's like passed out or died. And I think that's so interesting because Charlotte doesn't know. She doesn't even realize that anything's happened. And it's not until she gets all the way up to her mom as she's talking to her where she realizes that something has happened to her. I think it's really interesting that that's the way they chose to do it. I love it.
Well, and when she calls Dora in, Dora, come in here, and Dora walks leisurely across the room. Wouldn't you hustle a little bit? Hustle a little bit.
Well, you don't know if anything's happened.
You don't want to rush into a sweat.
Oh dear.
Anyway,
dear.
See that Andy, for us, we part ways. I really found that sequence to have done a disservice to what we know Bette Davis is capable of delivering, and I think that's too bad. It is hard to take Bette Davis seriously when she's playing off such an enormously ridiculous death scene performance. That's my pick.
That's what you're saying. Gotcha.
Paul Henreid plays Jeremiah DeVoe Durrance. Now, we like him a lot. Obviously, we like him quite a bit. He plays the married man who won't leave his wife, but is fine leaving his daughter, miraculously. What is the deal with him and his philandering?
The philandering done in the film is done in a very, very much a safe way due to the censors at the time, right? They don't really come out and spell it out for you. I mean, they kiss, and that's virtually all we see. But obviously, they had a little tryst in Brazil. They get stuck by the side of the road and end up kind of...
Yeah.
Luckily, there's a cabin where the crazy driver drove off the cliff so that they could crash while he goes to get a horse or car or whatever he goes to fetch. But it's a strange little dalliance that they have, and I think it's kind of an interesting romance that is brought up here that these two kind of fall for each other, but it's done in such a way where it's like I think that there's a real emotional connection, and it's one of those things where they have a little bit of a physical connection, but he won't do that emotional connection thing, and it's I guess the old tried and true affair in movies, right? Where they have a physical affair, but he promises he'll leave his wife one day, and then she ends up going crazy and boiling a rabbit in a pot.
I thought just in terms of his performance, it was fine given what I'm on the record as saying I felt like that whole relationship was not. I don't feel like it was architected sort of well enough for me to buy it 100%, and I found myself just sort of slapping my head a number of times. But one thing I did not slap my head about, when they were on screen together, you definitely could feel that sort of electricity, and it was magnified 1,000-fold by that super sexy cigarette trick.
Isn't that the best?
Oh, that's the best. It made me wish all of us smoked. Don't smoke, kids. Smoking kills.
This is what I love about about stuff like this. And I mean, cigarettes, as awful as they are, you do something like this in a movie, and it's like, oh God, this is why I should smoke, because look how sexy that is. I can see why it works. I can see why people would buy into it. I want to smoke just like Bette Davis does, so that somebody like Paul Henreid can light cigarette for me like that. I mean, this is why people started smoking, because of things like that.
It absolutely is. This is, for those who can't visualize it, he puts 2 cigarettes in his mouth and he lights them both, and then gets them both started, and then hands one off to her, and she takes it longingly.
Oh, it's good.
And sucks it down. It's it's very sexy, and a great trick, and they're great on screen.
He was in Goodbye, Mr. Chips. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I don't know why I forgot about that.
We like him, right? We're on the record.
Absolutely. And right after this, he does your favorite film, Casablanca.
That was right after this, man.
Right after the same year. Right. He and Claude Rains, our next guy, right?
That's right. Claude Rains, Dr. Jaquith, running what has to be probably the most out of compliance sanatorium ever run. His sanatorium is the reason there is regulation on healthcare providers today.
No, I like to think that when Claude Rains runs one, that it's just going to be okay in the end. Because it's Claude Rains. What could go wrong?
It's a free-range sanatorium.
I just love Claude Rains. Bette Davis said that he was her favorite co-star. And I mean, I can see why. They have amazing chemistry on screen. He's just an amazing screen presence. I mean, man, it's just so fun watching Claude Rains do anything on screen. It's just great. I just really enjoy him. I mean, whether it's malicious like he was in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or just kind of casual and fun like he is here, or even kind of crazy like he is in Invisible Man. I mean, he's always great.
I agree. I couldn't, this is another point of emotional connection that I struggled with. I couldn't figure out, I felt very much like she was having feelings about him as her doctor that were inappropriate, and he was having feelings about her the same way that were likely inappropriate and sort of unrequited. And
really?
I thought that was that was an interesting sense that I walked away with the film. And I thought that honestly would have been a more interesting and compelling story than the one we got. Even as much as I like Paul Henreid, I that angle of the story is for the birds. I really wanted to see more of Claude Rains.
That's odd. I mean, I like him as the doctor. I like him as this guy who's kind of helping her find herself. But then Paul also does that too. I mean, when Jerry, kind of clicks with her and starts sending her those flowers. I mean, I don't know. I really enjoyed all of the stuff going on with Jerry and everything in that relationship. And I never got a sense that Dr. Jaquith had any interest in Charlotte in any way other than just as a friend and patient and just wanting to help her.
Now it's going to be the only thing you think about, though, because now I planted it in your head.
No, that'll be an easy one for me to squash because I think it's absurd.
Okay. I've already mentioned my love for Nurse Dora Pickford. I thought she was a wonderful addition in the house when Charlotte comes back after her trip to the sanatorium. Dora, played by Mary Wickes.
Mary Wickes.
You like her, huh?
She's one of those actresses that really stands out. I totally agree. She was fantastic as Dora, the nurse. I think that she brings a lot to that kind of character and the relationship and kind of helping Charlotte and her mother kind of find their level of connection at the end there. But Mary Wickes, I mean, yeah, she had been in the Sister Act movies. She was one of the gargoyles, Laverne in Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's just crazy to think that she had such a long career, and I think she passed away in 1995. But she did a lot of great stuff, and it's just funny to see her so early in her career right here.
Really funny lady. And if you look through her credits, I mean, you see her going from, she did a lot of TV into the 60s, from like Bonanza to the Beverly Hillbillies to the Lucy
I love
show.
Lucy,
yeah. I mean, she was all over the place, but Jimmy Stewart show in 71, she was on a number of times. So she just is a really naturally funny person. And I'm with you. It was such a treat seeing her in here. I didn't even recognize her until I looked at the credits. She was so tall in this movie. and it felt like Mary Wickes does not strike me as a tall woman.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember her in Sister Act as far as her height, but boy, yeah, you're right. She did seem just to really kind of tower over in this one.
Yeah. Let's jump into getting it made.
Yeah, Hal Wallace produced this. This was, it's a little confusing. I mean, he's a guy who had been around for a long time. He had been involved with the production of more than 400 films in one capacity or another. We've talked about a few, Maltese Falcon and King's Row. But it gets a little confusing because this was right around the time in his career where he ended up stepping away from Warner Brothers. Now, I think what happened is he had started kind of doing some independent production for Warner Brothers, and this was one of those films. But then the very same year, he also produced Casablanca, and he is really the guy who kind of made Casablanca happen. He came up with The Last Line. He was like very famous in the whole world of Casablanca. Yet, when it went on to win Best Picture in 1943, when they announced Best Picture and he got up to go accept his Oscar, Jack Warner jumped up and ran up in front of him and basically accepted the award as his own, even though Jack Warner, other than his name on the film, had nothing to do with it. And it was this strange little kind of thing that happened to him, and he kind of got stuck with that for the rest of his life, the fact that he got shafted. And so he ended up kind of leaving Warner Brothers. And so I was a little unclear. It was unclear to me if he started his independent production with Warner Brothers and then right away ended up leaving, or if he was still doing some independent production after that had happened. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, this all happened right around the same time, and he left, and he ended up still having a very successful career. But very interesting little story about him, and kind of terrible situation for him.
His films, from Little Caesar in 1931 to Rooster Cogburn in 1975, like all of them are really terrific films in some capacity. Right, he's one of those guys who really had his proverbial finger on it.
Oh yes, he did. He was one of those people who just really knew how to make a good film.
Just one thing about Saul Polito. I mean, I have already made a comment comparing cinematography of this film to The Little Foxes, and in particular that death scene. It feels really staged in this film for me. But that is not to say that Saul Polito isn't a really terrific, one of the legendary, cinematographers. 167 credits through 1949, and he has done so many films with so many of the greats that it is just worth noting that, no disrespect, because there is some great work in his catalog. And this film seemed just really staged to me. And I sort of put that, I don't know where that rests, but it was just not much in terms of just the creativity of it, with the exception of maybe that last shot I'll give you. And kind of the way we look at Charlotte, there's a lot from the top of Charlotte in the first part of the film, and from below in the last part of the film when she's kind of achieved her power, which I think is interesting visually. But generally, it's pretty staged and not all that interesting.
I definitely agree with you there. As much as I do love this film, I wonder if it boils down to the fact that, I mean, really, Saul Polito started his career almost a full 10 years before Greg Toland did. And I wonder if it's just kind of, that having that ingrained, just kind of the structure of film and just how films were put together at the time. True. And, it was just a thing. And that's just how he went about doing it, and didn't change that much. Because, I mean, even something that's just beautiful to look at, like The Adventures of Robin Hood, which is just a really stunning film to look at, it still feels very staged, as beautiful as the film is, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Arsenic and Old Lace, same thing. I think that could be said of his films, is that they still have a very staged set look, like they're movies told on a set in Hollywood. Whereas Greg Toland, I think, might have just come from a different time that was trying to do something a little different. So this is my take on it. I don't really know. I'm speculating, but based on the look, I could make an argument for it.
No, I buy that. You wanted to talk a little bit about Warren Lowe in editing?
Well, less about Warren Lowe, who was the editor for this, more about the fact that Don Siegel was actually credited on this film as I guess he was helping with the montages, is kind of what his credit reads, which I'm not 100% sure the specificity of what that is. The only thing I can think of is, he must have been, helping with when they were doing all the stock footage of Brazil and kind of, what Brazil looked like and all that sort of stuff as these guys were going around. But it's just interesting that this is, a place where Don Siegel kind of got his start before he really moved on to do some bigger things.
You're talking about Don Siegel, like Dirty Harry Don Siegel?
Yeah, the Don Siegel, exactly.
Don Siegel?
Right, Escape from Alcatraz. Yeah, he started as an editor. I mean, I think he didn't start directing until the mid 40s, so soon after this, but before that, he had been doing editing in the late 30s into the early 40s. And so and it was all montage credits. And so, all of his editing credits are montage. So, very interesting. Very interesting.
Any notes on the music?
I just love it. It's just big romantic music, and I just I think that it's just something that I just fall in love with. I think it's just it's sweeping, it's kind of romantic, it's sweet, it's tragic, it kind of has all of it, and I think Max Steiner did a great job with it. I love it.
I agree with you. I think he did a great job with it. It is all of those things that you said. It makes me think of just about any of the most romantic moments, and so we'll call that a win.
There you go.
How did it do at awards season?
Well, speaking of Max Steiner, he actually won an Oscar for this, for Best Score for Dramatic or Comedy Picture. So congrats, Max. You did a great job here. Bette Davis was nominated for Best Actress, and Gladys Cooper nominated for Best Supporting Actress. They both lost to Mrs. Miniver. Greer Garson took Best Actress, and Teresa Wright, who we talked about last week, walked away with Best Supporting Actress. So congrats to them. But it left Betty and Gladys with nothing to take home.
Bereft. Bereft.
Indeed.
Any other, this was never remade, right? Sequels, prequels, it's just what it is.
It is what it is. It's an interesting, it's a book. I would be curious to, I don't know. Now I'm actually kind of curious to read the book and see how it deals with the flashbacks and all of that. And if it really is something that a modern filmmaker could take and do something else with and make something interesting with it. But I couldn't find anything of anybody who had done any sort of remakes with it. So I'd be curious if someone has, but I didn't find any.
How did it do in the box office?
Well, Now Voyager ended up costing $761,000 to make, which in today's dollars is just over $11 million. Pretty reasonable. It opened in New York October 22nd, 1942, then opened wide across the country on Halloween, the same weekend as I Married a Witch with Veronica Lake, Frederick March, and Robert Benchley. This movie ended up grossing, $2.2 million, or about $32.5 million in today's dollars, giving it an adjusted profit per finished minute of $181,535.
Well, so it did all right.
Did all right for itself. Looking at what some of the critics said at the time, I think that people might agree with you, Pete. They seem to say that it's find it a little kind of not that great. It's not very effective. The logic is a little strange. It doesn't resolve its problems as truthfully as it pretends. But a lot of people connected with it. I'm certainly one of those people. I think there's a little bit of a romantic in me that really just kind of found the story to be very sweeping and powerful. But it's one that I think left people mixed.
I always learn more having had these conversations with you, and while my opinion, I have to tell you, has not necessarily changed on the film overall, I love that you love this film, and I love that you have that connection with it, because it makes me appreciate it that much more.
Well, and I certainly hope that, between Little Foxes and this, that at least you may not be falling in love with Bette Davis, but I'd like to think that you're seeing a good variety of stuff that she can do. Some very different characters between these two films.
Absolutely. And I feel like we're getting into, well-trod ground here with where we're going from here, films that I have seen. And so I'm really looking forward to making some new connections now because it's been a long time. But before we do that, we should probably rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you're going to look for Now Voyager. And it's frustrating because there's a comma in it. So
I know, stupid
is that stupid.
It's one of those things where people need to, I don't know how you do it, but internally it needs to be listed with now comma Voyager and now no comma Voyager.
Yes.
Yes,
that is a truth. That is, we should take it as axiomatic. Anyhow, so find this movie, 1942, Now Voyager, Bette Davis, and rank along with us. We'd love to see how this does on your flick chart. Andy, how do we start?
All right, first off, we have the Now Voyager or The Road Warrior, Mad Max 2. If you're worried, Pete, I'm going with The Road Warrior.
Okay. Oh, thank God.
We don't have to start fighting yet.
Okay.
I could sense that you were getting nervous. I just wanted to help you out.
Okay, good. Awesome. Off to a great start. Yes. What's next?
All right. The next one is The Host, little Bong Joon-ho. I am definitely Now Voyager on this one. I had so many problems with The Host.
I know, and I hate that we're going to start this right away. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready. 1, 2, 3,
paper.
Rock. What was that?
What was what?
That was a delay.
There was no delay. Well, there was a delay on the 1s, 2s, 3s, but we said paper and rock right at the same time.
On my end, it was like rock, paper.
Are you serious?
Yes.
No. I said it at exactly. It hit my ears as I said it.
All right, I'll give it to you. Asterisk.
What was that? You see? You think you asterisk? You think I would cheat you?
No, I don't, but it seemed awfully suspicious. Next up, we have Now Voyager or Say Anything.
Interesting.
Now, this is something that I noticed after our conversation last week. Because we ranked the Little Foxes against Say Anything, and how strange was it that? And it didn't hit me at the time, but it's such a similar film to Little Foxes. It's about a young, naive girl who falls for a boy and who has a parent who is doing much more duplicitous stuff than she ever realizes. But because of that, she ends up growing and moving past that and finding that she has to escape that life in order to move on with the boy that she loves.
I love that you found that connection and that it was the same as Say Anything. I wish I had seen the Say Anything, the grand death scene would have been great. But interesting that I think on rewatching Say Anything, we both had some issues with it. And so I'm curious where this is going to land for you. I am thinking you're going to pick, anticipating you're going to pick Now Voyager.
You're anticipating correctly.
And I think I had enough challenges with Say Anything that I'm going to give you Now Voyager.
Well, take it. Oh, here's one that we haven't seen in a while. Now Voyager or the 1945 film noir Detour.
Oh, Detour for me. Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to pick Now Voyager. I don't feel like they're too far apart, but I still feel strong enough about Now Voyager that I will Rochambeau it.
That is pretty strong.
Well, if I like it more, I'm still gonna stick to my guns, right?
No, that's fair. I think we liked it. I think we really liked Detour, and I think it would be a principled win. I'm going to stand up for Detour. I'm going to stand up for Detour.
All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Scissors.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Now Voyager or Alien 3? I'm going to say Now Voyager.
Yeah. I know. This is...
Mama!
There's got to be a word for this. There's got to be a word for this. It's not a flick chart hate crime. It's actually,
I mean, I'm being mean. Alien 3 actually isn't. I was thinking of Alien Resurrection, which is really.
Oh, I know.
Alien 3 is not the worst. It has.
It feels it's
issues.
The glorified music video is what it is. I think I am still going to pick it. I'm going to pick.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really? You feel that surprised?
I'm doing Now Voyager, and I do feel a little surprised, but it's okay. I understand you're picking it.
Okay. All right. Let's do this.
Ready?
Let's do it quick. Pull off the Band-Aid. Here we go.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Rock. Oh, crying out loud.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Scissors.
Paper. Oh, you cut me.
That got a sting.
It's not that bad. Okay, Now Voyager or David Fincher's The Game.
We also had some interesting challenges with The Game. I don't think we had as many as I have with this one.
I'm going to say The Game.
Good. Me too.
I don't have, surprisingly, so many people have issues with that one, and I don't have any of those issues. I really like
The
that
Game.
film.
No, we talked about all the weird socioeconomic stuff and the ignorance of the film. Like we had our fair share of conversation points.
Yeah, I know, but it's such a fun film to watch. It's definitely the one I'm picking. So
all right. I could argue about it, but
why?
Agree.
Let's agree to
agree.
Okay, Now Voyager or Spies, Little Fritz Lang silent film. I'm saying Now Voyager
because I know that this is really you're Now Voyager.
Why are you so surprised?
Well, because last time we had this thing and you picked Fritz Lang. You picked Metropolis.
I know, but I love Now Voyager. The Little Foxes I found to be a really interesting film, but it's not one that I love.
All right. I'm going to give you The Little Foxes.
You mean Now Voyager?
I'm going to give you Now Voyager.
What movie are we talking about?
Whichever one you want, Andy. You can have
it. Now Voyager or Seconds? I'm going to say Seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
John Frankenheimer does it. John Frankenheimer is what it takes to beat this film.
I have picked other films that have beat this.
I know. There's a lot of creep factor in Seconds. I'm going to give you that.
Yes.
Let's do Seconds.
Such an interesting film. Well, that puts it at 219, a few spots higher than Little Foxes. I would have probably put it up higher, but you know what? It's okay where it is. And I know that you probably feel it's perfect where it belongs.
I'm not even sure that it's perfect. I think it probably could have taken a fall a little bit lower. But that's okay. As I mentioned, I am excited with where we're going from here. Where are we going from here? What is the next Bette Davis film? And does she kill a parent or a spouse?
Only with her eyes, I think, in this next one. We are going to be jumping up to 1950's Best Picture winner, and we're going to be talking about All About Eve, and very much looking forward to that one.
Excellent, excellent. What does this do for your Letterboxd ranking? I'm assuming you're a 5-star on this film.
I'm actually 4.5. There are things like Elliot's departure, a few little things like the weird flashbacks, things like that kind of just keep it from really hitting that 5-star. So it's 4.5 for me.
I'm going to give you a solid 2.5 for me.
Woof.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we've had a split like that in a while.
I know. What's that all about?
So much for my case for Betty.
That's okay. Andy, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling next week things are gonna change for you. I can feel
we
it.
Shall
I
see.
feel it. Until then, I think you know where you can find me, Andy. I gotta go to bed.
Oh, Pete, shall we just have a cigarette on it?
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth, Pete.
But you know what? Amazon didn't give us much this week.
That's because everyone loves it like me.
Everyone stinking loves this movie. 90% 5-star rating on this film. So I went ahead and I picked a 5-star. We'll see if this reveals anything you didn't already know or feel. Alrighty? Are you ready?
Very sporting of you, old chap.
Yes, I'm just Trying to play the game, Andy. Getting out from under a controlling mother, says Viva from 2007. Excellent, beautifully costumed and lit film of 1942 starring young Bette Davis as a woman who gets out from under her bossy mother's thumb long enough to blossom into a sophisticate who falls in love with an unhappy married man. Later, she helps his sad daughter out of her depression. Good story and cast. I tell you, that controlling mother of hers threw herself down the staircase on purpose. My mother, my mother, my mother, my mother. And scene.
It's almost like a poem at the end there, right?
Right? Yeah, she really kind of launched into it, Viva. I thought that was something. And, in case you didn't know, that controlling mother of hers threw herself down on the staircase on purpose. If you missed in the movie where the controlling mother looks slightly off left of camera, stares at the stairs, and then throws herself down them.
Right, just in case you get really confused by what she's
in case you missed that.
There.
Yeah.
That's somebody who doesn't understand subtext and doesn't understand body language. And unless they said it, I didn't see anything.
I'm going to throw myself down these stairs, I think. What's yours?
Well, I've got a 3-star by Wayne, who said, I recently acquired the DVD presentation of Now Voyager. Am I the only one to notice that a key scene has been left out? I believe there was a montage sequence showing the physical change in Charlotte, makeup, diet, exercise, etc. This scene is not in my print. There is a still of this transformation in Gene Ringgold's book, The Films of Bette Davis. Also left out of my print is the scene where Ilka Chase, as Davis's sophisticated sister-in-law, offers to loan Davis a wardrobe to wear on the cruise and to mark the garments with notes to Charlotte so she will know which accessories to wear with each dress. This renders a later scene meaningless. Warners were lax and have spoiled a classic for me.
Wow.
Now, I think that's a little harsh there, Wayne. Just the way that movie making works is sometimes they film scenes and they don't end up in the movie themselves. I have never seen a montage sequence showing Charlotte's physical transformation, and I think that would actually spoil the entire point of her big reveal when we see her walking. Just like we see when we first meet her, we see her feet, and then second time we meet her, we see her feet, and we then get to see her face in both cases, revealing the new Charlotte. And that would ruin the entire point of that second reveal. And I have a sense that the filmmakers understood that and chose not to include that montage. That yes, they probably shot, and yes, Gene Ringgold's probably got some of those stills to include in his book. As far as the sister-in-law's bits, again, they probably edited some of that out because they're like, you know what, we show the tag on the dress. We get it. We don't need to kind of beat the audience over the head with it so they get it. So I think that that Wayne has some unfounded issues with this just because he saw a few stills. But the funny thing is that looking at people's comments about it is some people get really convinced that they've seen it. And some people just down and out refuse because of Wayne's comment, refuse to watch the movie or buy the movie or anything until Warner's can get their act together and fix this egregious error of theirs. Wow, you went opinionated on this one. I kind of did a little bit. Sorry. Let me put my soapbox away. That was I'm just saying it's not that it's just heavy for an Amazon block. Usually it's all jokey and you were like, you brought the rain. Well, I read this and I guess I got it got my ire up. What can I say? I know I like you like this, Andy. Would you like a cigarette on it? Don't let's ask for the moon, Andy. We have our podcast.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know. You're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than the Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit. Some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our big Bette Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Bette Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.